Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Good.
Well, everyone, welcome to The Harvest,
Yes.
where we discuss everything cinema and story, and as we learn, you learn. As we grow, you grow. My name is Xavier Garcia.
I'm Jonathan Garcia.
And this is episode 27. Episode 27, The Making of a Great Actor.
That's what I was doing there.
I know.
Yeah, taking your lines.
Well, you called yourself Jonathan Garcia.
I know I did, but I was saying your... It's all right. Keep going.
All right. Okay, well, this past week, we started a much longer conversation, a much longer discussion about the good versus the great actor and what separates the two. But in order to dig into such a nuanced topic, we needed to define a whole bunch of terms. We needed to define styles and acting philosophies. We briefly discussed the main points to what defines method acting versus practical aesthetics acting and other techniques, as well as how actors are utilized by varying different types of directors.
Yeah.
One thing is clear, is that a mediocre actor for the right role yields a greater performance than an Oscar-winning actor in the wrong role. Having said that, we scratched the surface about the casting process, but we determined that 50% of great film is the tedious casting process in and of itself. But the one piece of conversation that really intrigued us both was the comparison between Christian actors and non-Christian actors and the quality of work we see across the board in faith-based versus secular films.
Right.
And this is a topic that's been discussed ad nauseum, but the twist that we brought to the conversation was a philosophical and physiological and psychological one that we haven't really heard talked very much about. And that's the concept of biblical righteousness, spiritual conviction, and moral justification when applied to the Christian actor's duty to interpret a role. But before we go down that rabbit hole, let's talk about certain traits and characteristics of a great actor, because we didn't dig deep enough, I don't think, in the last episode, and I think we have the opportunity to do that now before next week's episode, because we have some pretty cool things lined up for next week. Yeah. So let's do a little bit more of exploring the great versus the good actor. Now, there are certain characteristics that we wrote down. Yeah. And we came up with a simple list. I'm sure there are more, but these are the ones that we personally feel really attached to and feel as though are really important to us as far as the films that, we would like to create and what we would look for in an actor. And the first one that I put down on the list, and we can just, once we throw it out there, we can discuss it and break it down a little bit further, is intuition.
Right, that's the first one.
An actor and intuition. And intuition is also known as like when you're in the zone, being in the zone. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it happens to athletes. You remember, and I know we use ourselves a lot as examples, but what better example than your own history and your own past, which is something that we're going to talk about for an actor also. But when you're, as an athlete, when you're in the zone, can you remember yourself when you're at the Reggie Lewis Center?
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, the Reggie Lewis Center is a world-class indoor track and field facility. And once you get into, on the NCAA level, once you get into some of those really high up meets, like nationals, all New Englands and things like that. But even on the professional scale, they have like worlds, indoor worlds there at the Reggie Lewis Center. So I remember going to the Reggie Lewis Center, and I'm sure you had the same exact experience. And you're at the runway of the triple jump, or you're at the starting blocks of the 55, or is it 60 there? 60-yard hurdles?
No, it's 55.
Is it 55 at Reggie?
For the professionals, they're able to do 60. But yeah, it's tough.
So you're at the 55 high hurdles, or at the top of the runway for the triple jump, and it almost is like the whole world just like closes and disappears, and you can hear your heartbeat. It's like, and like everyone that's on your left and on your right,
it really
that's
does
screaming.
Happen that way. It really does. I remember. I mean, somehow we would always hear our mom.
So that's what I was going to talk about. She was the only thing that could break the fourth wall.
I don't know how. You could just hear her. It wouldn't throw you off, but I mean, if I was doing like a 400 race, I'm like, it would motivate me. And I mean, like her, because she was intense. Yeah. But she would only come to a few of like the big events.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but yeah, when you're in that zone, it really does feel like there's no one there because you have a routine, you have a process, you have this like thing that you do to get yourself ready, and you've kind of now separated yourself psychologically from the environment.
Yes.
And you are fully engrossed in, what you're about to enter into.
It's crazy what happens from a psychological perspective. It's like somehow you get into that tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And all of the distractions, everything just kind of fades away. That's why, like, sometimes, when you're watching the NBA, you're watching the playoffs are playing right now. It's the Heat's versus LA. And I watch them when they step up to the free throw line, and you've got people like, I mean, obviously now with COVID, they're in the bubble, so you can't see any.
You got the monitors, you got the
social
media videos.
or like the guy that's kicking the field goal, like Gostowski, he's gone, but Folk, he's there to kick the field goal, and you've got people just doing crazy things. And NBA, I think is worse because they're right there,
right,
and they've got those long sticks, and they're going, or like they're doing crazy things.
I don't even know where the ball would go.
I would be throwing it at people's heads. Yeah. But the ability to let's use the free throw line as an example. The ability for that to just disappear, and it's just you, the ball, and the basket.
Yeah.
And that space between you and the basket.
Yeah.
And all of the preparation that you have done, where you're no longer sitting there about to throw that ball thinking the basket from my feet is X amount of, distance away, and therefore I have to arc at this amount, and I have to throw with this kind of velocity, or, you're not breaking down the technical of how you're going to throw this free throw unless you're Shaquille O'Neal. Then you're freaking out and you're going through the technical.
Yeah, the concentration level has to be spot on.
Yeah.
You have to be fully in control. I remember even playing video games where the remote starts to shake when you're about to shoot the shot. That's like the most important shot, or about to go, and you're trying to get it in, and it's but like for you to have the ability to be in the zone, to have that ability to separate yourself from the distraction and get into the routine is a huge tool to have in your acting ability.
You've got all that adrenaline. Mm-hmm. You've got all that focus, all of that preparation, because that's really what's key in that moment, is it not?
Yeah.
You have done so much prep. You have done so much work prior to the moment where you're on the big stage, and you're about to shoot the ball or deliver the lines. You've done so much prep leading to that you no longer have to think about everything fades away.
Right.
The technical, the surrounding environment, all of it disappears, and you become and enter into what's called the zone.
Right. It's there's a moment where you're performing or when you're acting that you're kind of thinking a lot like, how's my performance going to be? How am I going to perform?
Yeah.
How's my acting? Am I going to act as well as scene partner? Am I going to do good? Am I going to be able to influence? There's a moment where in the zone, when you're in the zone, you're able to remove all of that distraction and being able to compete.
Yeah.
And be able to perform everything that you've put into you.
Yeah.
So that this thing that you're having there is not just like two people getting together, but it's this performance that you guys are doing together.
And so much goes into that preparation. It's not just like, oh, you read your lines and you're memorized.
Right.
Have you done the homework behind it? And look, that looks different for every actor. And different directors require, we talked about this last week, have different expectations of their actors and also see their actors through unique lenses. Some directors think that actors are cattle. Others think that actors are the engine oil to an engine, And so all of that aside, for you personally, the process that you go through in order to get into the zone is unique to you. And for some of you, it may be, constant and continued line readings with, and rehearsals, or maybe it's, you have followed a homeless man and lived as a homeless person for the last 2 or 3 weeks just so that you can get into the mind and the life of what it means to be without food and without shelter. I mean, whatever it is that you have done in order to prepare, keeping a journal, a diary, a log of, certain things that motivate you or upset you or frustrate you. I know that there are people, for example, that write an entire, outline of, 2, 3, 400 questions that they ask themselves, and we talked a little bit about this last week, as far as getting to know who they are, the preparation, all of that, the work that you put into it, the physical work, especially if your role is an action sequence, right? And you're an action character is involved in some stunts, and and you have had to train and build some muscle and some strength and pliability in order to not be injured on the job. That's part of the preparation. All of that preparation and everything that you need to do. And there's a ton of things that you can do, and you as an actor know best as you research and you study the craft. But all of that must be done prior to it, so that when you get to the moment where you're on the big stage and it's ready to perform, you can let go of all of that, literally get it out, throw it out the window, because instinct kicks in. And the more that you've done this, the more that you've practiced, the more that more roles, more films, short films, student films, practice films, mock films, real films, feature films with studios or independent films. I mean, the more that you have done, the better you become at, in the moment, getting into the zone. Yeah. Getting into the zone. And that's when you can actually let go and live in the moment. Yeah. I'm going to read a quote from Stanislavski, because he recognized this connection between actors. When two actors enter the zone, he says this is a lot more than just listening. It's not just listening when you enter into the zone, because while you're in the zone, you can listen, but you can listen and not be in the zone, right? It's something that he called communion. It's interesting. I'm going to read you a quote. He said, "When you speak to the person who is playing opposite you, learn to follow through until you are certain your thoughts have penetrated his subconsciousness. In turn, you must learn to take in each time afresh the words and thoughts of your partner. You must be aware of his lines, even though you have heard them repeated many times in rehearsals and performances. This connection must be made each time you act together, and this requires a great deal of concentrated attention, technique, and artistic discipline." And so it's, as they are speaking, those lines aren't just landing, on the table. They're not just hitting a wall. They're not just going in your ear and out the other. Yeah. They're actually entering and penetrating into you and having a deep impact, whether it's emotional or psychological, physical, but you're actually allowing the lines to enter. And when you're in that zone where your dialogue, and not just dialogue, Stanislavski always talking about dialogue, but I believe, it continues on to talk about even motions, movements, expressions, all of that. When you allow that to influence and affect and infect you, now you're entering into another place. Now you're in the zone, and now you guys are not, the scene partners are no longer just talking at each other. It's almost like they're talking into each other, and something powerful happens at that moment.
Yeah, it becomes a dance more so. It's like where now there's so much involved in this performance that it's not just lines. One, you go, I go, you go, I go.
Yeah, it's like a good salsa. Like if you and your scene partner can't salsa, you're gonna be throwing, you're throwing your partner out the window, and you're going to spin and break their ankle. It's like there has to be a chemistry and a synergy, a zone that you enter into, so that it's almost as if you are anticipating each other's moves, but you're actually hearing and allowing their influence, what they're exuding, what they're putting out to enter in and affect you. Yeah. So anyway, I decided to pick out a couple of quotes from like famous actors regarding these things, and I can read one of them. You can read the other. Gary Oldman, when it comes to intuition, he says, "The thing a drama school can't give you is instinct," which is what we're talking about here, instinct and intuition. "It can sharpen instinct, but it can't be taught, and you have to have intuition. It's an essential ingredient." Gary Oldman is among the best when it comes to disappearing into the role.
It takes time, and I'm like looking through the actors list or at IMDb, credits. And I'm just like, wait, what? That was Gary Oldman?
Yeah.
His performance as gosh, I'm blanking out right now, but the Prime Minister.
Churchill.
Churchill.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Oh my gosh,
That was amazing.
It was phenomenal.
It was amazing, and you wouldn't, know. And even when he wears a little mustache in the Batman movies, that's Gary Oldman. You don't even know.
Yeah.
It just, he does such a good job.
Or the Fifth Element.
Or the Fifth Element. Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Or even when he was the crazed, antagonist in the Book of Eli. Yeah. It's so, obviously he knows a thing or two about intuition and being in the moment and, engaging and putting himself. He's genuinely, I think the reason why he disappears so much isn't because he's good at disappearing. It's because he's good at receiving the world that he's in, and he becomes one with the world. Right. He's allowed not just the characters' lines that he's working with or facial expressions, but also the world. Mm-hmm. So another character will say a line, and what you're supposed to do if you're in the zone is receive that and let that do something inside of you. It's not just about the scene partner for him. It's also about the set, right? The world, the environment. He lets that come into him. And that's why he changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think there's something great about that. And I think, when, back to the analogy of sports and this, when you're watching, when our mom is watching us, a lot of times they're thinking, my son's got to do good. My son's got to do good. That's all their focus. I hope they don't fall. I hope they don't hurt themselves. But when the race goes off, because the performance and the talent is there, they're so caught up on the event.
Yeah, right.
And they're seeing, wow, look at these guys run. Look at him. Look at them. Look at this exchange. Look at this, and they're watching the performance, and they kind of lost focus of my son, is he going to do great?
Right. Interesting. That's right. Now they're receiving the whole story.
They're receiving the whole story. And that ties in with what Gary Oldman does is his performance is so good and that he's so in the zone that we're not looking at, is this person acting well?
Right.
Or is this person, just performing? We're so engrossed in the story.
The greater the performance, the more you're no longer looking at the actor, right? Yeah. Because the actor is just a part of the story, and now you're just watching for story.
Yeah, and everyone goes to a movie because they want to see their favorite actor perform.
Yeah, because they know that in watching their favorite actor perform, they're going to get a great story. They're going to get lost and engrossed in something that they're going to be able to follow and enjoy. Mm-hmm. Interesting. The next point that we put up there were to differentiate a good actor versus a great actor. Oh, well, here, let me give a quote here. Do you want to read the Robert De Niro one?
Sure. I always tell actors when they go in for an audition, don't be afraid to do what your instincts tell you. You may not get the part, but people will take notice.
That's very true.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because it's always refreshing to see something, because we are all unique. We're all very different inside. Our expressions are very different. Yeah, we may all see the same things in TV and get influenced by all that stuff, but at the end of the day, we all take it in and pour it out differently.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very important, because there's things that people do. It's like, wow, I would have never done that, You may not have won the role, but I could, those are beautiful little nuggets that show the brilliance in your ability.
It's interesting. I'll give you a personal story, a personal anecdote. When we were casting A Blood Throne, the role of Salome was supposed to go to a woman that was in her late 50s, right? And that's how she's described biblically at that point. She's a sister of Herod the Great, and she is a contemporary of his, and they're around that same age. Arissa Page auditioned for the part, and she was, I think, 29 at the time, or 30, and, it was obvious that she was too young for the role, but she embraced the youth that she had and brought that as a part of her performance. And at first, as we were discussing, and, this is some rare behind-the-scenes stuff that nobody knows. At first, we were like, I don't know that we... it's the role it says it's 50. Is there going to be a disconnect there now? Are people going to think that it's like somebody else? But what she was able to bring to the table was so memorable. by using her youth that it stood out. It stood out. It stood out, and although it wasn't what was written on the script, it stood out so much that we were like, it has to be her. I mean, she nailed it. She brought a piece of herself. She was authentic and brought it into the performance, and it stuck out.
Yeah.
You know, and we had some great auditions. We had some great auditions from everyone that auditioned for that piece. We were torn about it, but everybody was around that age, you know, like they could fit. Yeah. Maybe they were young, but at least like they acted a little bit more, you know, of that age, and Arissa didn't, and that stood out. So anyway,
yeah, and you'll get a lot of directors in Hollywood that, you know, aren't you know, want to stick to the script, you know, especially these high budget, you know, like it's already done, this is what you need to do, go out. But then there's people like Scorsese who loves when people just do what you do first, and then you know, we'll make adjustments. Yeah. Because I personally, I like that kind of style.
I love that.
Because
but he trusts his actors because number one, he knows them. He's worked with them many times, right? The casting process is a phenomenal process that he goes through, and he knows them and he trusts them, and he trusts the fact that they've put in the work. Right. And so what they're going to bring to the table is going to be something that chances are he didn't think about, because he knows that they've been thinking more about their characters than he's even had time to think about, because they've been living that character, you know? And that's a great thing to be as a director, to know like, oh, I can trust my actors implicitly with these roles because I know they've been putting in the work. Mm-hmm. Then you will get that kind of you know, the leash will be loosened a little bit, especially for younger actors, you know, that don't have a reputation. But when you show you're prepared, the director will say, well, what do you show me, like tell me what you want to bring to this scene, you know? Right. which is phenomenal, because that's when like the really awesome those special things, those special moments happen in a film. Cool. The next point, take risks. You know, and that's so important. You got to be willing to make a fool of yourself, right?
Yeah, we discussed so episode 26, we dabble on the fact that, you know, we said how there is this wall that we naturally put up where we don't want to break it because there's an image we want to take, we want to show. We do that with friends as a great example. You'll know what type of friends and how you behave with them. And
we do that all the time with friends. You slightly change and you talk a little different based on like the group of friends that you're with, you know, like you got your hood friends, your voice drops a little bit.
Exactly. So you wanna break that. You have to find a way to break and do something. And you should even try it. That should be like a something you should do. Yeah. Do something completely different that your friend would never have expected. An expression or an action that they would be like, you know, that they would say, who is this person? Because now you're breaking the mold of what they expect, and you're bringing something fresh and new. Yeah. That's something that you're putting yourself on the line. You're taking the risk of what, you know, the audience will say from it as well. Yeah. So
and this doesn't mean that, like, you know, the moment of now the performance finally, you're just gonna change it all up and do something crazy because there are opportunities for those risks to be taken, you know, like there are rehearsals. Mm-hmm. There are times, for example, you know, and a lot of these things, sometimes it is appropriate when you're in the middle of a performance to, as a result of something that has happened, you know, you're inspired uniquely. So like, for example, you've rehearsed something falling the same exact way and your response is always the same. And the response is always the same. But in one of the takes, something different happens about the way that it falls, and you're inspired to react differently. And at that point, either you can ignore it and just, I got to go through my robotic action and say the same. Or you can take that moment and be like, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to respond uniquely to that moment.
Yeah. And that's the world of improv, really. That is the taking risks and, you know.
And that wasn't even a big risk, what I just explained. Yeah. It was a little tiny one.
Yeah, but it's like reassessing, you know, how could I, you know, go beyond than what's on paper.
And improv is awesome for that, because improv is literally about making a fool out of yourself, right? It's about humiliating yourself in front of everyone. And there isn't anything greater. So for you actors that are either just beginning or perhaps you haven't done this, I encourage you to take some improv courses or join a community improv group. Those are the best because those are usually the worst, right? Yeah. It's not a professional improv group. And when you're put into a community improv group, like you're really put into some situations where like you're really humiliating yourself, and you got to be okay with it.
Yeah.
You got to be okay with it. Like allow that part of you where you're messed up, like that messed up part of you to be exposed.
Right, and you're surrounding yourself with people that are willing to do the same thing, so they're unique, they're different, they're not like you.
Yeah.
And there's no greater thing than be surrounded by just different types of people, because you can learn that the world that you have put yourself in, there's more personalities out there.
Yeah. Are you willing to let your guard down, forget about acting entirely, and just be your authentic self? In those types of situations, because if you're too concerned or too worried about what another person is going to say and or think, then as an actor, forget it, you're doomed. Right? You're doomed. And that's why it's so important to take some of those risks. Most actors, they get too locked into their technique and in their line readings and their pre-practice presentation of a scene to actually let it all go and relate to the person in front of them. And if you can't do that, then you're going to be in trouble. Now, there's a quote from Johnny Depp. He says, I think, as an actor, it is good to feel the fear of failing miserably. I think you should take that risk. Fear is a necessary ingredient in everything that I do, he says. And so I think that there's the... When it's comfortable, when it isn't challenging,
right?
When there's nothing to it that makes you nervous, sometimes it's not even worth it, right? It's like it's just gonna come out as a normal, everyday thing. But the moment that you're taking a risk where you're exposing yourself to be humiliation or whatever it may be, if I dance in the middle of this scene all of a sudden, even though I think my character would dance and I can't dance, I don't know how to dance, I'm gonna look like a fool in front of everyone, but then all of a sudden that your character would probably dance, but you're not gonna do it but then you do it, and even in your foolishness of how you're dancing, it's brilliant. Because it's unexpected, it's quirky, it's different, and then all of a sudden, you've got the Joker going down the stairs moment. I don't know, like you've got a moment where you see it and you're just like, that's so different, that's so unique, that's so interesting, and you accept it, and it becomes a brilliant moment.
Right.
The next one, this one's really unique and interesting. Empathy and the human condition. Natalie Portman shared this. Really short but really sweet observation on TV recently, and she said an actor's job is empathy, and that's it. And that's what she said. That's how she defined an actor's job. And the first rule is really, and it's kind of like a follow-up on what we just said, the first rule is just to forget yourself. Think only of other people. Think about other people. Find out what makes other people tick, what's important to other people, what makes them happy, what breaks their heart, the way that they behave, what they do. Get to learn other people, empathize with people, understand other people. And in so doing, you begin to understand character motivations. You begin to understand character decisions. You begin to understand, why a character thinks, moves, or acts a certain way. Because as you empathize with others and you bring empathy to the table, you begin to learn behavior.
Right.
And understand behavior.
Yeah, and there's real relationships. It's not just, self, expressions, but there's real connections, and people can see that.
Yeah, and you know what? I was listening to the Roger Deakins podcast recently, and Josh Brolin was on there, and he was talking about the fact that, his whole life, his parents, his family, like it's all been in acting, and because of that, he wasn't really interested until he started to realize that acting is beyond just, delivering lines, and he's like, what actually engages him and excites him is studying human behavior and expressing human behavior. And there's something about human behavior and the intrigue about humans and why they are the way that they are and why they do the things that they do that he likes studying, and that is what he brings to his characters. He brings a studied approach to behavior. And if you have learned to empathize with your neighbor, and those around you, to learn why they are the way that they are, when you go then to recreate or create a character that's been assigned to you, as a result of a film that you've, auditioned for. Now you've got the character. Now you can empathize with the character. So if you have to be a villain, you can empathize with the villain. You can understand, for example, why Christopher Waltz in Inglourious Bastards. I bring that role up because, he crushed it as that role. He's such an evil person, okay? He works for the SS, and he's hunting out Jews, and he's evil. He's the epitome of evil. But the way that he portrays his role, it's like a terrible car accident. You just can't take your eyes off of him. It's like he's doing such a brilliant job, like, that's a bingo, he does that, and you're just like, oh my goodness. And you can't take your eyes off of him. Now, I'm sure that as Christopher Waltz was perfecting that role, he was like, how can I portray this? This is sickening.
Yeah, you don't want to be a mustachio mover.
Right, but he had to empathize with Landa, Captain Landa, I think is his name in the film. He had to empathize with him and bring that brilliant performance out.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that was a great example of it was great. No, he definitely. I think that's. It was very refreshing to see that type of villain.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
it was. That's why
you loved to hate him.
Yeah, and that goes back to the things that we talked about, taking those risks, and showing different things that people haven't seen, and people are like, wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah, and ultimately, what that ends up leading to is the fact that you begin to feel like the character, and you begin to. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to align your views with the character's views. I'm sure Christopher Waltz didn't walk out of there, screaming out anti-Semitic rants, right? No, of course not, but because he came this close to just understanding why he was doing what he was doing, and therefore was able to authentically portray it, and he was then therefore able to feel what the character feels, and he was able to set himself aside and his views aside in order to just portray this thing that isn't real. It's a character, it's a caricature, it's not real. Right. It's just a figment of a writer's imagination that's now portraying just a piece, one element of human life in order to tell a story. And in order for him to play his part and his role in this machine, in this body, he has to be able to play the part, feel the part, be the part. A couple of Chadwick Boseman has a quote about this. He says, the late Chadwick Boseman, when you're doing a character, you want to know the full landscape. You want to know them spiritually, mentally, and physically, which is very interesting. Yeah. Especially with with what we're going to talk about, shortly soon, about the Christian character actor versus the non-Christian actor.
Yeah, I think that is pretty spot on, because there's such a bigger world than the flesh. The soul's mind, will, and emotion. You have the spirit, the essence of what's beyond this. You have principalities, you have powers, you have such a a culmination of things that I think that to a Christian is a great advantage, because you are now exploring this whole realm. Yeah. So technically, I feel like a lot of Christians have an opportunity to be brilliant actors.
Yeah, absolutely, because they bring an understanding to the spiritual element of, as Chadwick Boseman said here, understanding the full landscape. The spiritual element of it is one that may get glossed over by someone who doesn't understand that realm. Right. Now, that also brings up a whole host of other dangers, right? Because if you're now playing around with the spirit realm, if you will, and just kind of entering into spaces and places, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually, that you're not called to, or you're not supposed to, because it's not the role for you. That's why we're going to talk a little bit about this.
There's no covering in it. Yeah. It's very. It can be dangerous.
It can be, or it could be brilliant, and then and we always bring up the Herod role, and in a Blood Throne, and the fact that him portraying this evil, vile character, whom existed in history, a murderer who killed his own wife and children and everyone around him, and ultimately himself, and here is this Christian actor who has to portray him to the most evil degree. he knew that he was called for that role. He confirmed it. He goes, I know the depths that I need to go to in order to portray this truthfully. But I feel like I have been prepared spiritually in order to explore his spiritual world.
Right.
And that's important.
Yeah.
As an actor to bring that to the table. The next point of what makes a great actor that we thought makes a great actor is versatility and flexibility. Well, what do I mean by that? There's the versatility in life and life interests. And then there's the versatility in mediums and character choices. So if you're a dancer, for example, and that is your mode of artistic expression as a dancer, try some acting courses to better yourself as a performer. That's what I mean by versatility.
Yeah.
You know, if you're an actor, well, then take some vocal lessons to better your speech and your dictation or accents or dialects or, delivery. If you're a musician, you play the saxophone. Well, take some art classes or read eclectically and expand your sonic creativity by expanding your imagination through different genres in novels, different genres in art, or strengthen your creative palette by becoming a sculptor, or figure drawing. And when you become versatile by the creative choices and creative outlets that you choose, you also start to strengthen yourself and that right side of the brain, that creative element and creative aspect of yourself, where you're now learning also as an actor. If you're taking dance lessons, you're learning about your body. I always talk about this. I have a pet peeve, and I think I've mentioned this in episodes in the past.
Yeah.
As an athlete, I have a pet peeve when they take an actor that has never been an athlete ever, and they put him in like a chase sequence where he has to run. And I'm sorry, but when I watch Nicolas Cage run, I'm like, I know. Like, I mean, I'm sure he killed the intense performance, where he goes, woo, but the running, like, can we put a body double in?
Right.
So maybe take some dance classes. Maybe, before you know that you have to take up this movie, get a personal trainer, go to the track, train, and learn some A skips and B skips and karaoke, and learn how to move your body so that when you're running, you can run like the character that's supposed to run. You know what I mean?
A lot of time, a lot of method actors do this. They go deep studies and take up things that,
hobbies
that may not have anything to do, but they thought that their character would love this.
Yeah.
They believed, my character would be hunting foxes, and riding on horses or whatever. You know what I mean? Something that we don't even do anymore, but they'll go that far to find things that make sense to that actor. And I think that is brilliant because they bring up, so much out of the character. They'll talk differently. They'll make adjustments with their subtle things with their mouths,
things
and their hands,
that they learn,
and they shift. I think about comedians, and I think about how they are able to make a small shift both in vocal and facial expression that you are freaked out that you're actually looking at the individual. You're like, how did they do that? It's almost like
Jim Carrey.
It's almost
really
like what's that technology that changes faces?
The deep fake.
The deep fake. It's almost like a deep fake right in front of you. It really is, because you're looking and you're looking at the person, and all of a sudden their voices change, their facial expressions change, their mannerisms change, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, I'm looking at the actor.
Have you seen when Jim Carrey, I think it was a stand-up special when he was really young in his early years, and he starts going like this, he's going, and all of a sudden he's Clint Eastwood. Have you seen that?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Now, that's impersonations, and comedians are usually really great at that.
Right.
But yeah, I watched that and I go, oh, wow. He literally right in front of your eyes as he's going like this, contorted his face and became Clint Eastwood.
Right.
That blew my mind.
And that's what I mean by the versatility, is when you begin to explore things that have nothing to do with acting, just hobbies, anything. You will bring into the role very subtle actions and behaviors and language and things that make sense to the character.
And that's why, as, like, let's say you're not getting roles and you're auditioning, you're not getting roles, it's okay during that time, for example, to take up equestrian, riding horses, archery, take up a couple of hobbies, do something different, take up cooking, do so, because you never know when that is going to be pulled into a role. You're adding to your tool belt. You're adding things that someday might be used.
Right. Every single we're like sheep. We're repetitive beings. We do the same thing over and over and over and over again. And if you expect to take a role that has to do, with some historical figure, trust me, your life probably has no connection with that historical figure.
Right.
And so you have to, if you want to be a great actor, you have to think about things that have nothing to do with your day-to-day life. Huh. You can go back and think of emotional experiences, because we all cry the same, not physically, but we all have tears, we all have those emotions, we all have anger, but they're all expressed differently, and those are the things that you have to explore.
But even reading, read some books, change up the genre. If you love, comedy and you're read a mystery novel, and even that is going to work different parts of your brain that haven't been touched before, because now you're no longer reading it for the laugh. You're now trying to investigate, who committed the crime. And someday you're going to get that, that role that requires the detective, and you're going to pull from that, but subconsciously maybe, or consciously, and that's what you can be doing as far as versatility and flexibility. But that's the physical kind of versatility. As an actor, there are versatilities of choices of character, for example, that you can also take, or a supporting actor versus a lead actor versus a background actor or a day player, making those kind of versatility and flexibility choices, because then you're going to know the machine. And you're going to understand, what's happening. Well, this kind of character is this type of person, and he's a date player, and so this is what he's going to bring to the performance, to the day, to the scene, to the moment. Just having had experience in all those areas and with different roles is crucial in mastering of your craft, right? Would you ever hire a carpenter who's a master with a hammer but has never picked up a saw in his life? He's what is he going to do? What is this carpenter going to do? Yeah. He's just gonna hammer the whole house. He's never gonna cut a piece of wood, and so as a carpenter, it's you gotta be able to have all these different abilities, all these different disciplines and understanding, just whether or not you're a master at all of them, just kind of gaining an understanding of how all of it works, so that you can then perform as a carpenter. So that's kind of the versatility that we're talking about, and flexibility, because oftentimes what will happen if you're in a role and you're acting, you're going to be confronted with a conflict or an obstacle, and the resolution of that conflict and obstacle, whether it's through how you deliver lines or how you express or how you move, is going to come through one of those experiences that you've stored in the back of your mind.
Right.
We've got a couple. Leonard, you want to read the Leo DiCaprio? I'll read Jennifer Lawrence.
Sure. The good thing about acting is that it always keeps you on your toes. It's not like any other job where you can go in and do the same thing as yesterday.
And that's true. That's true. And you never should be doing the same thing as yesterday. And because it's always changing, having that plethora of flexible and versatile choices that you've made throughout your life, you will be able to bring something new every time. And not just with every role, but with each role every day.
Yeah.
And not with just each role every day, but with each role every day, every take. And now when you start to break it down that granularly, you're like, whoa, how much do I have to live in order to be able to be an actor? Well, you live through life experiences. Jennifer Lawrence says, actually, this is a pretty famous quote. She says, I never studied acting. This is Jennifer Lawrence. Yet the first time I auditioned and did a cold reading, I surprised everyone for my honesty and limpidity. They told me I could plan any role because I have no walls. I don't put anything between me and the character I have to play.
That's very important, and I think that's something we're going to discuss when we talk about Christian actors.
Yeah. Anything you want to tease with right now?
The wall is something that is very common in the Christian world. That's something. There are moral walls that we put up. There are these psychological, spiritual walls. It's a lot of walls we put up before a role is taken. Something that they naturally say, this is something I don't want to cross. I don't want to go this far. I don't want to have these. I have certain convictions. I don't want to break that. And that's very, very. I think that is one of the major dividing lines between a great performance for a particular role that they take. I think that's something very important, and I think we'll dabble on that when we get there.
Yeah.
So that quote is very, very, very good.
Okay. The next point is experiences and vulnerability, and this is very similar to the one above. You're allowing yourself to influence your character choices. That's where it kind of differs. So let's be honest. Every character we choose to act, we choose because of a personal fascination or some personal intrigue. 9 out of 10 times, you're not just taking a role just because your agent says, hey, you need this role. And if you do, then it's just a transaction type of role. You're doing it for the money because you're, I don't know. Kind of like actually Josh Brolin was saying that even about the what did he play in Deadpool? Cable. He said it just felt like a transaction. It felt like a financial transaction that he just did that, in the midst of actually doing Thanos, Oftentimes your agent will come and be like, hey, you got to do this role, because it's going to advance your career this other way and blah, 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 and you just take it. But then there are the roles that you take where you're just like, I'm connecting with that role. And when you do so, what is it that's connecting you, right? There's something personal that's happening in mind, in subconscious and memory and thought that you're like, either A, I think that I can kill this because, I can kill this role because I've got these personal experiences that I think are going to be well exercised in this, and I want to further research that aspect of me. I want to go deeper and just understand that.
Or believe the story of this character.
Exactly.
I will go all in for it.
Yeah. Or some people even use it as like a mode of like self-help. Maybe if I take this really messed up character, I'll be able to face my fears and close that door. And that happens, believe it or not. And actors will take that.
It's happened a lot in our theater plays. A lot of times, sometimes people wonder when Xavier's casted in the past, did you cast this because you know my life and what you're trying to heal me or something?
Trying to heal me. Yeah.
And but sometimes I know that in our sets it does work that way, where some people go into this thinking, this role, I feel like it connects with me. And sometimes it's really, sometimes even a spiritual thing where God is just calling them to take up that role for a healing. So there's so many reasons why, someone would take a role within these experiences and vulnerabilities. It's important to allow that to take a hold of you, because clearly you're going to be able to bring out something far greater than any other role that would come to you.
Right. And so that's kind of what I wanted to touch upon, is that you're able to pull something out of yourself and bring it to the character and bring it to the role. And that kind of thing requires you to be vulnerable. To use your life experiences and pour them into another character requires an exposing of yourself a little bit, right? Because you're now sharing with the world a piece of you. You're giving that character a nugget of truth, real truth from your own life. And this is I thought of this metaphor and I thought it was brilliant, right? You have a character, right? And this character has been written by a screenwriter who's imagined this person from wherever. I don't know. It could have been from a periodical, from a dream. It could have been from IP, something that already existed. I don't know. They created this character. And now you as an actor, you have this character. You have this canvas of this character. And now you have to take this character and make this character your own. You got to give it life. You got to flesh it out. And not only give it life and flesh it out, but it's got to seem real. It can't just be a caricature of a character. It has to be a real person, because if you're going to bring a caricature onto the screen or onto the stage, the audience is going to call you out. And they're not going to follow. So I don't know if you've ever seen the behind the scenes to like any of the Marvel movies, right? Like you watch the actors and the actors are on set and it's just green screen everywhere. And what does the director say, or the director of like the VFX director? He says, "Well, you got imagine right here is going to be Ultron is going to come from over here, and
then you're looking at a green tennis
and
ball,
it's like or over here, like there's going to be this thing that's going to be exploding, so you just picture it, and you're like, okay, sure, I'll picture it, and then they're in that moment and they're acting, but oftentimes, even in that entire green screen world, they're handed a prop, or they're working with a set prop or a set piece or something that's practical. And that practical thing is the only real thing in this green screen environment, and that kind of grounds them. It almost like they levitate to that, and that becomes their reality inside this unreal green screen space and world. And I guess what I want to bring to example is that when you bring pieces and nuggets of yourself and of your life, that is that real prop, that real set piece that you're bringing to this green screen of a character. This character is a green screen.
Yeah.
And you're trying to imagine and envision all of these things about this character's life. Oh, when he was 12 years old, he ate tinsel from the Christmas tree, and so he can no longer eat pasta. Like random things that you're inventing and coming up with them. Oh, that one would have been a personal thing. That's true. Yeah. That happened. Right, and that's the green screen. Yeah. Like you've created this character, and that's the green screen. And so you have to envision that. But then when you bring something personal from yourself into that character, and you put that in, that's that one actual practical prop that's in your hand that's real, and it grounds you. Mm-hmm. It grounds the moment, it grounds the character, and oftentimes, believe it or not, a lot of the VFX artists are basing like their set extensions on like the practical set. Right? And so the practical grounds the performance. The nuggets that you bring from your life give it truth and authenticity, and the character takes shape around those things. Right. And the better that you are to bringing your truth and your authenticity to your character, the better all of those other things, the set extensions, if you will, become. Because now you've got something really good. You've got a good light reference. You've got a good texture reference. You've got good angles and depth of field references in order to build this 3D environment. And that's what it's like for character. That's cool. What do you think about that?
I like that.
Right? I don't know. I
thought that was great. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think it's to be able to find something, an experience, or even something that you discovered in your hobbies and your studies that you're using as that prop piece to ground you inside that world, that story.
Yeah. And we do that, with even when we talked about versatility, those life experiences that you've had. And if you can bring something like that to your character, you're gonna, there's more truth, more reality is going to come. Meryl Streep has a quote. She says, "Acting is not about being someone different. It's finding the similarity in what is apparently different, then finding myself in there." Interesting, huh? It's finding the similarity in what is apparently different, then finding myself in there. And so she does a lot of that into her roles, and that's why she's considered such a brilliant actor, that she's able to then bring pieces of herself into this character and therefore gives life to that character.
It's cool.
Next, camaraderie basically works well with others.
Yeah.
Right? But the camaraderie is unique. Like, it's not just you and I sat down and we had coffee before a role and I got to know you and you got to know me. It's deeper than that, right? Like, oftentimes, if you and I needed to play brothers in a film, we would do that really well. Right? Why? Because off screen we have that camaraderie. Right. We have that experience. And oftentimes, like, if you are supposed to play the best friend of someone else, but you've never known that person, you've never met them, you should have some off-screen time getting to know them and becoming a friend to them, because that's going to play out visually on screen or even on stage. Not so much as on stage as much as it is on screen, because the nuances of acting on screen are smaller, and relational things are more visible on a screen than on a stage from an audience's perspective sitting 50 feet back. Nevertheless, relationship, camaraderie is super important. Is it not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you had any experiences personally in your acting where you knew you needed to have a relationship with your character in order to portray your character truthfully on screen?
Yeah, I think one of my earlier roles, I think Armor of God.
Oh yeah,
Tommy. I was such a we're friends, and it was really interesting going in there, and I think because it was so early, I was just so free in my expressions with him, because I didn't expect him to, say anything after the cut, to be like, that was weird, or that was, you know what I mean? It was just like, oh man, that was so brilliant, because the camaraderie, the connection, we just clicked.
Yeah.
And it was just so fluid, and the story became alive because people can see these two have it's real relationship.
Yeah, so it's interesting when that film was being created. After the cut, it almost as if the relationship that was there during the take didn't change.
No, right.
It almost like kept going through into the next take, and it was interesting, to see that. I mean, and that's, you guys weren't necessarily committed to be method acting, but because you were in the zone and then you had the camaraderie outside of the set, in between takes, it just carried naturally to the next take. And you could see it in the final product.
Yeah, and I'll tell you other things. I know that there are actors, I'm blanking out of the name of the actor, but there have been roles where some actors purposely are rude and do not talk to other actors because of the role. Yeah. Because the role entails that. It asks that. It's like, that this is who I am, and when the camera stops, I'm not stopping. Yeah. When it cuts, I'm going to continue being a jerk. Yeah. Because it doesn't allows them to maintain the authenticity,
Yeah, and on the flip side, I've also seen the exact opposite of that, where two actors are supposed to be like arch enemies, nemesis, like you're the bane of my existence. And what they will do is, prior, to rehearsals, they'll get together and, they'll have a consensual agreement, and they'll say, all right, tell me a little bit about yourself so I can know what to hate, Yeah. And they start to say things that are obnoxious about themselves, so that, like, while they're consensually agreeing to this, they're like, oh man, you are miserable, and then they allow that, to like influence their thinking about each other. And so go out there, and if you're supposed to be a villain and you're gonna sit across from your arch nemesis, just duke it out. Just get into a fist fight with them, right?
Yeah, right. No, exactly.
No, but you get what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's okay to have that then consensual agreement and say, hey, you know what? Let's talk about how we hate one another. Or the other approach, and just like, I'm not gonna talk to that person. I'm not gonna have anything to do with them in between the takes, because on screen, like, I hate them. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Different actors, right? Different strokes for different folks. But you gotta, oftentimes, it helps to have those conversations ahead of schedule, right? Like, so that the actor will know, it's like, oh, that's not who he, like, I didn't do anything wrong. It's just he's going through his process. Here's a quote from Denzel. That's where you can find things and modulate your performance and give the other actor something fresh to respond to. We've probably all worked with actors who, when it's suddenly your close-up, they get sleepy. I don't like that. It's selfish acting. I won't tolerate it. And so Denzel Washington is saying, like, I'm a, if it's a BTS, and it's the back of my head and you're there, I'm gonna give you everything, right? Because we're, and that's what we talked about last week, like, not being a selfish actor, right? Being a giving actor. Like, I don't care that it's my ear and my cheek,
or I'm off screen,
right? I'm gonna give you everything. I'm gonna give, because this is about all of us together. And the more that I give you, right, of myself, the more that I'm gonna receive. It's the law of sowing and reaping, right? The more that I sow into you, the more that I'm going to reap back in performance, in relationship, in character. Cool. And the last one, which kind of expands into the next one also, is passion. Passion is something that you either have or you don't.
Right.
You can't fake passion.
Right.
You can't fake passion for a
I
profession.
know a lot of people who look at this, stuff on they watch movies and, I would want to do that.
Right.
But if there's no passion, that's
Don't
just
do
an
it.
emotional
Yeah.
just moment that you just thought it was cool and you wanted to do it.
Don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no passion, don't do it. Like, passion is different. It's unique. It's like a different beast. Like, I think about
passion can be crushed. And what I mean by that is passion can be crushed, passion can be squished, can be stepped on, but nothing will you can't do anything to it.
It won't dissuade it.
It won't dissuade it.
It won't destroy it.
It'll
the passion
continue
continues, right?
And
right. Passion is squishable.
Yeah.
Like if someone tries to squish your passion or squish your acting because of the passion, the acting desire isn't going to disappear. Right. I gotcha. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think of it, like even as an athlete, you think about athletes. I think about football players. Like they're passionate about football. So they're
Tom Brady, the next ring.
Right, exactly. No, that's right. Tom Brady, what's your favorite ring? The next one.
Right.
Or, even a better one. Julian Edelman. He's like, I'm happily miserable, right? That's what he says. That's his quote now. Cam Newton is trying to get him to laugh and to smile because he's like, come on, man. He's like, I'm happily miserable. But he's happy even when he's miserable. So it doesn't mean that, like, passion means that you're always joking and you're always, let's do this acting. No, like, he's miserable, but he's happy. And he goes and he's the first one on the field. He's the last one off the field. He eats and drinks and sleeps football. And, and he's constantly trying to better himself and better himself and better himself. And if someone squashes him and the tabloids say he's the worst, he caused the loss because of that, interception and all that, that motivates him to become better and better and better and better. And if someone tries to squish you, it doesn't. All it does is it ignites you.
Right.
And that's passion. And either you have it or you don't. And if you don't have that passion, it's a dangerous thing to get involved in. Don't get involved into acting because you saw it and it looks luxurious and they get a lot of attention because they're famous. Because if you go down that path, and that really requires a lot of self-seeking, and like exposing of the heart and the heart's desire. Because if you're going down that path, you're gonna suffer a lot. You're gonna suffer a lot, and even worse, not only are you going to suffer emotionally, but you're gonna suffer spiritually. As well.
Yeah. You're gonna. I mean, there's so much types of suffering. There's, this, rejection. You'll be suffering from that all the way to from not being able to see family, and I mean there's so much that goes on the experiences of an actor, but passion will be able to keep you going.
Yeah, it's and it's literally that passion comes from multiple places, but then like for the faith-based actor, like that passion gets placed and put in there by God, right? If God puts in that passion, that desire, that like this is a calling, this is something that I must do, then no matter how much it gets squashed by world or circumstances or whatever, it's like it's still there. Why is it still there? And that's something for the faith-based actor, for the Christian actor, that they need to really hash out. In whether it's, in prayer or through counsel of like pastor and elders, like it's something that you really need to know because it's as we just talked about all these things, the psychology of an actor, which is something that we're going to talk about next week, and the depths that you have to go into for the roles that you have to perform. If you weren't called to do that, then forget it. You're going to get destroyed in that realm. And it's important. The last thing is I'll just shoot out a couple honorable mentions.
Oh, yeah.
Those were the big ones, but these are my honorable mentions.
Cool.
Passion was the last one. Never stop learning.
All right, that's right.
Never stop learning. That's connected to passion. When you're passionate, you're literally like, you're never going to want to stop learning. You're reading a book about acting, you're reading a book about performance, you're reading a book about directing so you can understand the director DP book just so you can understand what the DP is thinking about when they're watching you. You're hungry, voracious, just devouring information to continue growing and learning. Preparation, we talk about that a lot.
Yep.
That's another honorable mention. Always prepared. We talked about that right off the bat. Generosity, we talked about the generous actor, right? That's what Denzel was just talking about. Last week we we talked about understanding filmmaking. and acting for the cut. And that doesn't mean that you need to like know how the editor is going to edit this, but have an understanding of filmmaking and what it takes in order to make a film.
Right.
Because you're going to know as an actor what you need to do in order to give the director and give the actor, the editor and the DP what they're looking for. And so it's a soft focus kind of thing. You need to have a soft focus when it comes to understanding film and filmmaking. And those were our honorable mentions. And I think we'll stop there because we're at the hour mark.
Cool.
And the next section that we're going to be going into is talking about the Christian actor and the non-Christian actor and the psychology that goes into becoming, for example, doing the method and entering into a different headspace. And I'm hoping we're planning on having a guest psychologist who's in the middle of publishing or writing a book about this. We're gonna get a nice little conversation. Maybe we'll do something through Zoom or just audio, but definitely to talk about this. I think it's gonna be a really interesting topic.
That's cool. I like it.
Cool. All right, that is it for episode 27. Jonathan, it's time for Creators Tip of the Week. Do you have a tip of the week?
I do.
You do?
I do. One of the, I'm a stickler for design.
Yes.
So I love nice looking applications, anything like that, design stuff.
Yeah.
I think, where did I put this thing here? I'm trying to find this. Oh, great. Cool. So, oh man, I just had it on here.
I have.
Go ahead. Why don't you say yours while I dig up mine again?
Okay. All right. Well, I've got a couple of things. And I really did want to give one that was specific to acting, but I got really excited about this 3D design software. And I remember when I was designing the set for Color of St. Auburn, I used a program called SketchUp. And SketchUp basically allows you to just create 3D sets and 3D designs. It's really for an architect, and you can create architecture with it. But when I was using it for St. Auburn, this was back in like 2008, 2009, I think. It was very rudimentary. But since then, it has taken off, where I think I even heard it at the Deacon podcast, where like professionals use it. It's not the preferred tool, but it's a great tool for filmmakers if they are wanting to design their sets and they want to create something that's more than just like a top down or more than just a layout. You can actually start to bring in 3D components to your design.
Oh, wow.
And you can put characters in there and everything, and it's called SketchUp. I used to use it a lot, and I haven't used it since until it just got re-mentioned, and they have done a ton of upgrading on it, and it's now pretty robust. On their website, you can try it free for 30 days. It used to be free. I used to use it for free. And I guess it got so good that they no longer give it. They no longer give it for free. But it's actually really cool. It's got a lot of great technology built into it. It's used a lot even for for people that realtors and things like that. But it can be great for you if you're designing a set. So if you've got 30 days to your pre-production and you need a amazing, robust, free software, you could try it free for 30 days or get in and pay. But like you could do a lot of things. I mean, you can even do props and give 3D props.
Oh,
so you can create 3D props into your space, so cars and stuff like that and all that. And then you can envision, and you could do it to scale. So everything could be to scale to the size of the person, cameras, all that stuff. And you could, so SketchUp, it's pretty cool. Good for the 3D community. Check it out. I'll put it in the notes. What you got?
All right. Well, it's, found it. Right on. Perfect timing.
You're trying to kill some time.
No,
tell me a little more about SketchUp. One more thing. Well, with SketchUp, you can also do landscape, by the way. So it's not just the buildings and the props, but like if you have a hill and hilly lands, you do that too. So there you go. I added a little. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I like that. I think that's something that definitely for
it helps
production and all the other stuff, not just for acting. It's really cool.
Right.
So this one's really cool.
All right.
I had to make sure
I will not
found
accept
this one.
uncool.
No, I had to dig it because I mean there's a lot of different kinds of this one, but I like the design, I like the layout. I'm sure there are people that are just like me. If you haven't found this already, it's called Cold Read.
Okay,
And
I like this.
What it allows you to do, it's basically, it helps you rehearse, it helps you record, and it does multiple things. It allows you also to record your voice, and then it captions out your words.
We were talking. Oh wait, it gives you a caption, a subtitle of your word.
Yeah. So basically, it's really cool. You have to look at it. Go on there now. If you're an actor, I recommend you get it. Because it's really, really, really neat. It's got really great reviews. It's got a lot of comments, a lot of
5 out of 5 stars.
It's got 4.5, so someone must have been like, it's not for me.
Yeah.
But
there's always the troll.
Right, but at the end of the day, it's really neat. It's made by an actor. So
cool.
So an actor develops
by
this
actors
app.
for actors.
Right, exactly. It's
That's
one of
good.
those things. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. We talked a little bit about that last week, so I'm glad that you gave us very specific, because I never gave an app for my creators tip of the week last week. I was just talking about recording your voice, rehearsing in front of a mirror, and picturing it as you're listening. So this one's perfect.
This one helps with.
What's it called again?
It's called Cold Read.
Cold Read.
It transcribes your words.
And it's an app, or is it a website?
It's an app.
Cool.
It's an app. It's an iPhone app. I'm sure it's probably for Android as well. But it transcribes, it helps you rehearse them, and it reads them back to you, obviously, and it also does like a teleprompter, so it's large screen so that it'll scroll for you as you're going to practice if you need to lay it down or something like that.
Yeah, or if you're auditioning.
Exactly.
Yeah, wow.
It does also video recording, and so it's able to put your lines along with the recording. So it's really neat. It's really good for memorization, rehearsal, and self-taping. So it's got a cool design. So I was like, oh, this is neat. I gotta play with this for a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. I like it a lot.
Sets things in folders too per project. So if you have multiple projects, you can organize it as well.
Love it. Well, everyone, thank you so very much for joining The Harvest. And special thanks to our producer, Chelsea Cowie. And to support The Harvest, you can visit our Patreon page. Now, it hasn't been updated, so we've kind of dropped the ball there. We really dropped the ball there. I'm going to have to go back into our Patreon page and really update that, because we've got so much cool stuff to be showing on there. And, and if you love what you're hearing, you can throw a couple bucks into the Patreon page, and then we'll build it even bigger and provide even more content, and all of that just gets recycled back to you, the viewer. And so we thank you so very much for joining us. That's patreon.com/The Harvest Podcast. And if you have any questions, and it's a quick thing, you want to just add us, you can tweet at xgarcia or
at Jonathan Harvest.
And we'll totally engage you in conversation there if you have anything, or if you have something longer that you want to discuss or you want to have discussed on the show, let us know. You can write to us at info@mountharvest.com or mountharvest@gmail.com, whatever floats your boat at the time. info@mountharvest.com. You can reach us. We'll love to hear from you. Any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, ideas, or a little story that you want to tell us, we'll read it all.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you guys. And yes, please like, share. Yeah, why don't you just subscribe with the bump, the COVID, because you don't want to touch the screen.
Didn't we use that one already?
No, we did this one.
The bump. Oh, the elbow.
Elbow, yeah.
Elbow that.
Yeah, subscribe.
That subscribe.
Yep, share and like it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.